a chimpanzee empire with over 200 members, the largest ever recorded, and it tore itself apart in a decade-long civil war. Today, we're diving into the dramatic collapse of the world's most powerful chimpanzee community. And let me tell you, this is not just a story about animals. This is a story about a violent civil war, a conflict so intense it forces us to ask some really tough questions about the origins of our own conflicts. So I want you to picture this. It is a cold, misty morning in the jungle. A chimpanzee is hidden, watching, waiting. And his target? It is not another animal he is hunting for food. The target is another chimp. A chimp who was once a neighbor, maybe even a friend. This is not from a movie. This is a real ambush, the cold, hard reality of a civil war. All right, let us get into it. Our story starts with the Ngogo Chimpanzee community. For decades, these guys were the absolute picture of stability and power. But then, almost out of nowhere, this incredible empire just fractured, and what followed was a devastating, decade-long conflict. Now, to really get a sense of how big this collapse was, you have to understand the sheer scale of their society. We are talking about the Ngogo community in Uganda's Kibale National Park. This was a sprawling empire of over 200 chimps. It was by far the largest group of wild chimpanzees scientists had ever recorded, which makes its eventual fall all the more shocking. You know, for the first 20 years of research, this empire was solid. The chimps moved freely between smaller groups, splitting up to find food and then coming back together. It was all one huge, interconnected society. But then in 2014, something critical happened. Several older males, who probably acted as the social glue holding the whole thing together, passed away. And almost immediately, the very next year, you could start to see the first cracks forming in the empire. By 2018, it was done. The split was complete and there was no going back. This community that had shared everything, territory, food, social bonds for generations, was now split into two hostile camps, the Western group and the Central group. What used to be their shared home was now a fiercely contested borderland. And what came next was just devastating. The Western group launched a systematic campaign of violence against their former community. I mean, look at these numbers. Between 2018 and 2024, researchers confirmed at least 24 attacks. 7 adult males were lost in the fighting. But the most tragic part? The violence didn't spare the youngest ones. 17 infants from the Central group also became victims of the war. And this really gets to the heart of how tragic this whole thing is. The lead author of the study, Aaron Sandel, put it perfectly. The truly striking part is that these chimps are taking the lives of individuals they grew up with, individuals they had groomed, hunted with, and lived next to for years. It's like their new group identity just completely wiped out decades of shared history. Now, as shocking as the Ngogo War is, it's actually not the first time we've seen something like this. To really understand what happened, we need to rewind the clock about 50 years to another conflict that completely changed how we see our closest living relatives. So, we're in the 1970s. The legendary primatologist Jane Goodall is in Gombe, Tanzania, studying a chimp community. And that's when she saw something that was honestly hard to watch. The first scientifically documented chimpanzee war, a relentless 4-year conflict that showed the world a dark, aggressive side of chimps, a side everyone thought was uniquely human. When you put the Gombe and Ngogo wars side by side, the parallels are just incredible. Both were kicked off by a major shift in their social structure, and both involved organized violence against former friends. But here's the crucial difference. The Gombe War has always been a little controversial, right? Some people argue that the researchers feeding the chimps might have accidentally caused the conflict. But with Ngogo, there was absolutely no interference like that. And this gives us a chilling confirmation. This kind of civil war is a natural behavior. Jane Goodall described what she witnessed as something that shattered everything she thought she knew about chimpanzees. The old idea of the gentle chimpanzee was completely replaced by this terrifying reality of a species capable of cold, calculated, warlike behavior.
So that brings us back to the big question. Why? What on earth could cause such a huge, stable society to literally tear itself apart? Well, scientists have been piecing together the anatomy of this collapse, and it did not just happen overnight. This breakdown came in stages. It started with what they call polarization. The two subgroups just started avoiding each other. Then things escalated. They started doing hostile territorial patrols, and by 2018, the break was final. They were totally separate, socially, physically, even reproductively. They were not one community anymore, period. And there was no single clear cause. Researchers think it was basically a perfect storm of problems. The group just got too big to manage, which led to way too many adult males competing for power and status. On top of that, you have the loss of those key older chimps, a big shift in leadership, and a fatal disease outbreak. All of that together made the empire fatally unstable. So now, let us talk about how this war was fought. Because this was not just random, chaotic aggression. No way. This was organized conflict, with clear strategies and tactics that turned lifelong friends into mortal enemies. And the tactics they used are chillingly familiar. Both sides started running aggressive border patrols, moving in organized groups deep into enemy territory. These were not just chance encounters, they were planned missions that often ended in ambushes of lone individuals. The attacks were coordinated, they were collective, and eventually the violence expanded to target even the youngest members of the opposing group, a chilling tactic aimed at destroying the enemy's future. But here's one of the most incredible findings from all this. The smaller Western group initiated all of the observed attacks. This totally flips the script on the idea that the bigger side always wins. It shows that being better organized, more cohesive, and having a better strategy can be way more important than just having more numbers. So for this final section, we're going to step back from the jungle for a minute and take a hard look in the mirror. What can a war between our closest living relatives really tell us about conflict, about division, and maybe even about the roots of aggression in our own species? I mean, this is the big one, is it not? When you see former allies turn on each other with such organized, lethal behavior, you can't help but wonder about that us versus them mentality that has caused so much pain throughout human history. And this leads us to a really fascinating scientific idea called the relational dynamics hypothesis. What it basically says is that the foundation for war doesn't actually need complex things like ideology or religion or nationalism. It suggests that all-out conflict can be sparked simply by the breakdown of personal relationships and shifting social alliances. Just stop and think about what that means for a second. These chimpanzees created new in-groups and out-groups and waged a lethal conflict without any of the things we associate with human conflict. No language, no flags, no gods. It suggests that for us, maybe our deeply held cultural divisions aren't the real cause of conflict. Maybe they're just the justification we create to cover up something far more basic, a biological impulse to divide when our social bonds break. But the study leaves us with one final powerful thought. If conflict can start at the most basic personal level with the breakdown of individual relationships, then maybe, just maybe, the path to peace can be found there too. It suggests that the grand work of preventing war doesn't start with treaties. It starts with the small daily acts of keeping our own communities, our own little empires, from fracturing in the first place. What do you think? Could understanding our primate roots help us prevent conflict in our own societies? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Fresh Science is here to bring you the most exciting breakthroughs from the edge of discovery. If you want to stay ahead of the latest news in science, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. You can find all the scientific sources used for this video in the description below. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. Stay curious and stay fresh.